Hey everyone, welcome back to Life, Death, and Everything in Between. I'm Bob Sinnott, and today we've got an incredibly powerful episode lined up, one that touches the very heart of grief, loss, and ultimately resilience.
And I'm Brian Baker. Yeah, this one's not easy, but it's one that so many people need to hear, because what do you do when life completely flips on you? When you lose everything literally and somehow you find a way to stand back up?
Our guest today is someone who's lived that story, from high school sweetheart to widow, from tragedy to transformation. She's here to share her journey with us, raw, real, and inspiring.
Jaime Matice is a beacon of hope and transformation, equipping individuals with the tools and insights needed to overcome adversity and achieve lasting success with authenticity and humor. She shares her experiences to help others to become empowered and make meaningful change in their life. Jaime, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Well, we're going to start right at the beginning. You and your husband were high school sweethearts, right?
That's correct. Yep. Pella High School. We both were born and raised in Pella, Iowa. We were friends for elementary school all the way into high school, and we started dating our senior year, and I lived away. I had moved away. So dated through senior year, dated in college, and then we got married.
And how long had you been married?
We'd been married 33 years.
33 years.
And been together 35 years when he was killed. Yeah.
And then May of 2020, everything changed.
Yeah, everything changed. So if you remember, 2020 was COVID, and everyone's life was changing, right? We lived in a different world, and I was working from home in February of 2020, and Troy was home part of the time. And in May, he was at work on a Saturday, and I thought, it's a nice day. We should go for a motorcycle ride when he gets off work. And I rode my own, and he rode, and we both grew up on motorcycles, experienced riders. And when he came home, we sat and talked for a little bit, and it's kind of funny because since it was COVID, he had been picking dandelions by hand with a knife in the yard. And I laughed because he was so excited. The neighbor lady across the street was an older lady and had a yard that was gorgeous. And she came and told him, Troy, your yard looks great. I'm really impressed. And he was proud of that. And so anyway, he said, I wonder, should I dig dandelions or ride my motorcycle? And I said, you know what? You need to go for a motorcycle ride. And I was going to go with you, but I think I'll stay home and get the grill ready for dinner. So he got ready and left on his motorcycle. And I was getting things ready for dinner, and the dog and I went in the house, and I turned on the news to see what the weather was going to do, because it was kind of dreary. It turned to a dreary day. And when I turned on Channel 8, I saw that there was breaking news. And it was a car versus motorcycle accident, which when you ride a motorcycle, anytime you hear things like that, it really piques your attention. Like you just perk up.
Sure.
So I perked up, and I was looking, and of course it was breaking news, so they weren't identifying anyone. But as I was watching it, I thought, that looks like our motorcycle.
Oh my. Yeah.
And then they said it was on Southwest 7th and MLK, which is a route we take home from our friend's bar, and they were remodeling because it was COVID. So I figured he probably went to visit his friend. And I looked again, and sure enough, it was our motorcycle. I could tell. And so my heart sank, and I grabbed my purse, and I ran and got in my car. And as I started down the driveway, my phone rang, and I answered it, and it was a trauma surgeon at Methodist. Oh. And he said, they're trying to let you down easy, right? They're trying to build into it. And the bike didn't look too bad when I saw it on TV. So the reason I grabbed my purse to go to the accident scene is I figured he maybe at worst had a broken bone. It was probably sitting on the curb. And he had this sound system that hooked to his iPhone in his helmet. And so I tried to call him and he didn't answer, and then I tried to text him and I didn't get a text back. So anyway, as I'm backing out, the trauma surgeon calls me and he's asking me all these questions. And he said, your husband's been in an accident. And I said, I know, I've seen it on the news. And he said, you did? And I said, yeah, I'm on my way down there. And he said, ma'am, are you driving? I said, yeah. I need you to pull over. And I said, no, I'm not pulling over. I'm on my way down. I'll be there in 10 minutes. And he's like, ma'am, I really need you to pull over. Is there someone that can drive? And I said, no. And he said, well, you know, we've tried to resuscitate your husband, and I'm so sorry, but he was no oxygen for over 10 minutes, and we could not revive him. And in the meantime, as he's, you know, trying to get there, I'm yelling at him, is he dead? Is he dead? Because I just needed him to get to the point. I'm very direct. And so it was agonizing, right? Because I just needed him to get to the point. So COVID, they weren't letting people visit in the hospital.
Right.
And so he said, can you come down to Methodist? And I said, yeah, are you going to let me see him? And he said, yes, ma'am, we have a room, you can come in. So when I got to Methodist, I had called my parents and stuff to notify my kids. I have 2 grown children, one that lived in Pella and one that lived in Cedar Falls with her husband. And so I asked my mother to go get his mother and bring her up. And she called me when I got to the emergency room, and she said, Jamie, what's going on? The hospital called me, but they won't tell me anything because I'm not the wife. And so I had to tell her on the phone, and I said, my mom wants to bring you up here. So anyway, it was really nice as far as I got to go spend time alone with him in a room. And, you know, when I got in there, they had cut all his clothes and everything. And so I was looking, and he didn't have a scratch on him. And I could hear music or people talking, and I couldn't figure out what that was. And as I sat there talking to him and just kind of looking him over, I realized that all his belongings were in a bag over behind me, and his helmet was there. And his music was still playing in his helmet from his iPhone.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was just kind of bizarre. And then I just waited for my son and his wife and my mother-in-law and my parents to come, and they got time with him. And so at the time, I didn't know a lot about what happened, other than I was told that he was hit and he was under the vehicle and dragged through the intersection about 30 yards and then pinned under the Jeep. And they couldn't get the Jeep off of him, and so he couldn't breathe, and he passed away. And so, you know, we went through, the next day I had people I didn't even know show up at my house, motorcycle riders. I had friends show up. People were so generous. They came, they brought food, and the motorcyclists took a collection, and I had a friend from far away start a GoFundMe. And that was hard for me because I'm a prideful person, and I had to humble myself so I could accept help, because I want to be the one to give help, right? Sure. I'm a fixer, I help, but I had to take help, and it was very humbling, but I have such gratitude for everything and all the people that helped me during that time. And so I only knew that it was a 15-year-old driver who was unlicensed in a borrowed vehicle, underinsured, and, you know, I felt really bad for him. We've all been 15 and done some really stupid shit, right?
Yep.
I'm sure none of you are innocent, right? I know you're not, Brian.
Oh, absolutely not.
And me neither,
I mean,
you know?
I am, but
Yeah,
no,
I'm sure, Bob.
That's not true.
Right.
So, I really felt for this kid and it was an accident. Well, as time went on, we had a funeral. We couldn't have a funeral. And we went back to Pella, to my hometown, and to our funeral home there. And he said, we can't have a funeral. I said, I'm going to have it at the cemetery. And he said, people can leave their car, but they have to stand by it. And I said, well, my people, they don't follow rules. So thank you for telling us.
Yep.
And I'll let people know.
Sure.
And so we were able to have a funeral there. His wish was to be cremated. So, but it was important to me and for my children to have him in a casket, have a service. So we went that route. And then after the service, he was cremated. Okay. And I'm glad I did that way because I think it helped us have a little bit of closure. And so while all this is going on, our friends and other motorcyclists had arranged a ride to escort the hearse. Oh, nice. So when we were in Pella, my daughter and son-in-law drove me, and all these motorcycles showed up. It was the coolest thing. And we drove through town and at the cemetery, everyone lined up. There were motorcycles and cars in the street. They couldn't even get in the cemetery. I couldn't believe how many people came. And I had to chuckle then because Troy and I talked about death a lot. And when you ride a motorcycle, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. You're going to have an accident. Right. Whether you survive, who knows, right? And so we'd had those conversations, and I knew what his wishes were based on those conversations. And he used to always say, no one will show up at my funeral. When I die, I won't have any people at my funeral. And I stood there before we started, and I said, well, Troy, you're wrong. There's a whole lot of people here, and you would be blown away, just blown away. People came from out of state.
Wow.
Yeah,
Nice.
It was amazing. And then the week after that, there was a motorcycle group that were doing rides for like birthday parties and stuff because of COVID. This man and his wife started this group, and they would ride their motorcycles and bring candy and gifts and stuff because kids couldn't have birthday parties.
Right.
And they felt like that was something to do. So they put together a ride for my husband. I did not know them. They knew friends of ours, friend of a friend. And so that next Saturday, about 200 motorcycles and I don't know how many cars came to that intersection, shut MLK and Southwest 7th down in Des Moines, Iowa, for about an hour. And people just came together. I rode Troy's old motorcycle with my daughter there, and all of our family was there. Our friends from Pella, friends from Des Moines, people I didn't know, the news people were there. And I don't, in a book that I read, they talk about widow brain and widow fog, and I didn't really know what that meant. And I look back now, and it's so true. There's parts of that first week or so that I don't remember who was there, and then there's other parts that are very vivid. And I remember thinking to myself, people probably wonder what the hell is wrong with me, because I was like I felt like I had to smile and be okay and be fine. And at that time I was still like, as a young man who made a mistake. And for me, I had to be fine. I'm the strong one. I'm the one that keeps it together. I was worried about my kids. And I was worried about his mother, and I wanted to be the one, strong one, the one with strength. And I kept telling everyone I'm fine, but I wasn't fine. And so very appreciative of all those people. And it was a really cool thing. When that happened, the newspaper reporter had called me the next day and told me she spoke to one of the witnesses who came on the scene first. And it was a young man who was a photographer. And she wanted to know if I wanted his phone number. And I said I did. And so I had called him and talked to him. And when I was talking to him, discovered that he was the ex-boyfriend of a girl I worked with. Oh. The small world is so true. So he, after the fire rescue got there, he took pictures of the accident scene, and he took pictures of everything that was happening. And he told me, I didn't want to talk to you. I prayed that you wouldn't call me. And I said to him, I need to know. This is just who I am. And he said, I'm glad that you got my number, and I'm glad that you called me. I don't know why I was dreading this, but you've made me feel so comfortable. And I really have enjoyed your stories about you and him and your marriage. And he said, would you like to see the pictures, or do you think that would bother you? And I said, no, I want them. So he sent me all the pictures of the accident. It wasn't how I had it in my mind, and some were pretty graphic. There were pictures of him on his belly under the engine of the Jeep, and his legs sticking out and bent. And I asked him, did he talk to you? And Mark said, we talked to him to try to keep him alive, and there was a nurse there. Other men were trying to get the car off of him. And he said he was talking, but they couldn't understand him. He was mumbling, but he was smacking the pavement with his hand. So, I move on, right? We go on about our lives. Everyone goes home. And Mark had shown up at the motorcycle ride at the accident scene. And a couple weeks later, he called me and he said, can I come and see you? And I said, sure, you may come to my house. And he came, and he brought me this book. And it's a hardcover coffee table book, and it's all pictures of the ride. And he wrote an inscription in it. He's in marketing, so he's very creative. He called me from Adam, and he put this book together, and he put the right people with the right groups on pages.
Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah. And he said a higher power guided my hand as I made this book. And one of the things that I got comfort in through this whole thing is that my faith became stronger. And I have an issue with organized religion. For me, man is very involved. I believe in God, and I'm very spiritual, but I don't attend church every week. My husband didn't either, and he felt the same way. But my faith became stronger, and I knew he was in a better place. And we had been through a lot in our 33 years of marriage, and I would say probably the last 10 to 15 years, he had fought with some mental illness and addiction and suicide attempts, depression. And he and I went through it together, and we came out on the other end better. A year before he died, we had our first grandson, and that was the joy of his life. The weekend before he died, our grandson spent the weekend with us, and we had so much fun, and I had a lot of pictures of him smiling, which he didn't do a lot. And so there was a relief that came over me because I knew his mental health was really good at the point of his death. And that gave me comfort, gave me hope. And I felt like because of that, I knew he was in a good place. And it was sad because all I could think of was this little boy is never going to know what a fabulous man he was. He was a quiet guy with a dry sense of humor. He looked he looked mean. Quite frankly, he looked like a biker. He had a long beard, and he was so kind-hearted, and you would never know that unless you got to know him. And people that got to know him, they knew what a great guy he was. And so time goes on, and I'm dealing with all the widow stuff, right? I'm doing thank yous. I'm making sure that donations go to the right place. I made sure that the Iowa Food Bank was getting donations in his name. It was important to him that everyone had a meal and ate. And so I wanted to make sure that that went there. And the other place where we donated memorials was a counseling service. Because of the mental health that he's been through, I felt it was important to give to them in his name. And so doing that, in the meantime, your same old day-to-day, right? Your insurance needs renewed. You need to file insurance. I was dealing with a traffic accident in my insurance company. And, hindsight's 2020. If I look back, there's probably some things I should have done different. That I got taken advantage of in some ways. But at the time, I didn't want to deal with it, and I just wanted it to go away. And people would say to me, "You're so strong. I don't know how you do it." I'm fine. I kept saying. And I was just really worried about my kids, and I wanted to make sure they were fine. And we were reading books. I'm a reader, so I was reading recovery books and grief books, and I'd get books for my kids. And then I got a phone call from someone at the county attorney's office, and I don't know who it was. And it was, at the time, I didn't think about it until later. I started thinking about it, and someone called me purposely because the police really weren't giving me any information, and I was asking a lot of questions. My major was criminal justice in college, so I was investigating in my head. And this person called me from the county attorney's office and said, the young man that hit your husband has a record, is a juvenile offender, and you won't be able to see any of his court cases because he's a juvenile, so they're hidden. They're not open to the public.
Right.
So this person gave me his case numbers so I could look them up. And when I did, I found out he was a 15-year-old gang member who had had a charge of assault felony with intent at the age of 14. He failed to appear in court 4 times. The fourth failure to appear was 5 days before he killed Troy.
Oh.
So now my viewpoint on this is different, right? Now I'm getting angry, and I didn't want to be angry. But if the state would have done their job and the police, he'd have been in jail. But he was out driving without a license. He got 2 traffic tickets. Driving without a license, failure to yield, and we got the failure to yield increased to $1,000 fine because it was causing death or injury. So I'll go back to that and the justice system. So as time goes on, I have a crime victim advocate that gets assigned to me, and he was fabulous. And the kid has some traffic court appearances, and so the crime victim advocate would go with me. And I just wanted to talk to him. I never got that chance. through the juvenile system, they actually told my crime victim advocate, this kid's been through a lot and we just don't think it's a good time. And he said, you have no idea. So I'm going down to one of his court appearances downtown, meeting at Starbucks at the Hy-Vee, and I park, and we had had a huge snowstorm, and the snow was piled up at the parking meter, and I tried to step over it, and I started to fall. And that's funny because I'm a klutz, and I fall down a lot. And my family would tell you, oh, what'd she do, fall down again? And so I was trying to save myself, and I ended up running headfirst into a steel railing in front of Wahlburgers, and it popped. I mean, I hit it hard right in the eye, and it was a loud pop, and I couldn't see immediately, and I sat on the ground for a little while, and I was thinking, what in the hell did I just do? And I heard someone say, ma'am, are you okay? And I looked up and I said, no, I can't see. I don't think I am. And it was a policeman, a young policeman who was in Wahlburgers and saw it happen and came out. And I took my hand off my face and he said, oh dear, you are not okay. He's like, do you need an ambulance or can someone come and get you? And I remember saying, I have no one. My husband died. And I thought that was so weird that I said that. But anyway, he's like, we'll get the ambulance. So they brought towels out. The ambulance comes. The crew in the ambulance had been some of the crew that were at my husband's accident.
Wow.
And I was shocked. It took me off guard and I cried a little. And the one paramedic said, oh, slow your breathing down. And he was in a panic. And the other paramedic said to him, it's okay, she's crying. And so stitched my eyes shut. I shattered all the bones on the right side of my face, blew the eye socket out. So I had to have surgery. I looked pretty bad. It looked like someone beat the crap out of me. And so I was headed to Florida because I love to travel, and I was doing a bunch of traveling. So get the surgery, and I said, I'll do the surgery as long as you can guarantee me I can get on the plane and go to Florida. And he said, I think you'll be fine. So get through that recovery, and it's been now about 9 months since Troy died, and my grandson turns 2. We had just had his 1-year birthday before Troy died. And so Maxon was turning 2, and I was going to Pella for the birthday party, still living in Des Moines. In the meantime, I had gotten a puppy, and I had a dog already, so I had 2 dogs now, but they kept me company. And honestly, the first probably 12 months after Troy died, I was so lonely, and I really probably had picked up some self-destructive behavior, knowing well that I did. But, sitting on the porch, drinking by myself, hadn't smoked in 21 years, started smoking again. Mm-hmm. I was really disappointed in myself, but yet I didn't care. So morning of the birthday party, I got to go to Pella. So I load up in the truck and I leave my dogs and I'm headed to Pella. And I got to Otley, Iowa, and my phone rang. And it was my neighbor, and we had recently become friends. I didn't really know her, but after Troy's death, she came over a lot and checked on me, and we became friends. She said, Jamie, are you home? And I said, no. I'm headed to Maxon's birthday party. And she said, your house is on fire.
Oh, my.
I thought that I was kicked in the gut. I don't even know how to explain the feeling, but my heart just sank. And I immediately pulled off and turned around. And it hit me. My dogs were in the house. And so I said to her, Tammy, my dogs are in the house. And I could hear the sirens on the phone. So I knew the fire trucks were coming. And I said, tell the firemen that The basset hound will be loose. He will probably meet them at the door, but my 3-month-old puppy is in a kennel in my bedroom, and they need to go get them out. And while she talked to me on the phone, I was driving like 90 trying to get back to Des Moines. And she said, they have them out and they have them on oxygen. And I said, okay. And I hung up because I felt like everything was okay. And I got home, and a bunch of my friends were sitting up on my front lawn. And some of the firemen had left. There was one truck of firemen still there, sitting in the driveway. And so I jumped out and ran up the hill thinking my dogs would come running to me, and I just needed that then. And no dogs came. And I said to my friends, where are my dogs? And no one said anything. And my heart sank. And one of the guys that I'm friends with, he said, Jamie, they didn't make it. And that must have been kind of the breaking point for me, because I threw a hissy fit. I did. I was bawling and screaming and cussing, and I threw myself on the ground. And I thought, you know what, God, I deserve to have this fit. I don't think I can take anymore. What are you trying to teach me? I don't understand. And at that moment, when I was laying on the ground, in my face in the grass, and I just felt like, that's it, I don't have a will to go on. Nature centered me in some way. The smell of the earth, the grass. And there was this voice in my head, and it said, you know what? Get up, pull your big girl pants up, and get to work. You got a lot of shit to do. And so I got up, and again, I'm fine. And I went back to my back patio and sat down, and I sat there the rest of the day, and people came and went, and fire inspector came and asked me questions, insurance. The ARL came to get my dogs for me, and I'd go in the house, and the smell just made me sick. I'd come back out. And my parents wanted me to come back to Pella, and I said no. I really needed to be alone. And my dad, he said to me, for once, will you listen to your old man? And he said, you need to come home with us. And I said, no, I have a hotel already. I need to be alone. So I spent about a week in a hotel. And then my son called me and said, Mom, come home. Because I didn't know where I was going to live, lost everything. In the process, found out that I rented this home. In the process, found out that through the widow brain fog, I thought I renewed my renter's insurance, and I did not. So I had no insurance. I had to replace everything. Well, thank God that we had some life insurance. Not a lot, because I had canceled a life insurance policy in January.
Wow.
Before he died. It was a voluntary one, but we had others through our work, so I was okay. And I had a job that I could take care of myself. Not every widow is that lucky. I have friends whose husbands died the same month, and she almost lost her home because she didn't have anything. So, people came for me again. You know, I had so much support after the fire, and I saved a couple antiques, just a few things out of it, had it cleaned, but pretty much lost everything and had to replace it. And people gave me things, and you know, I just slowly and surely replaced stuff. One of those self-destructive behaviors was shopping. You'll hear other widows talk about spending money and shopping to fill time. That I did that. In a 2-year period, I think I bought 2 or 3 cars. You know, just crazy stuff you don't normally do. So now I'm back in Pella, And I grew up there. It's a small town. I didn't really want to be back there. But I found that I rented a house from my kids' friends, and it was temporary, but I could go to my son's and see my grandson anytime I wanted and stay an hour and play and then go home. So that was a benefit. I was close to my parents and my sister and her family. I had old friends there, so it wasn't so bad. I'd always wanted a camper, so I bought a camper, and I had been traveling. I had quit my job right before the fire. I worked for an insurance company, and we did a lot of stuff with the state, and I had a pretty stressful job, and I just couldn't do it anymore. Life is short, and I needed to find myself and find out what my purpose in life was. So I took a year off of work, and I traveled a lot, and I found out that there's a purpose in everyone's life. Everyone has a purpose here, and some people never find it, and they just go to a job every day and work it, and it's not very fulfilling. And I felt like my purpose was to share my story, to help inspire people that you can make it through tough times. You can come out on the other end. And I was doing good, you know. I had been able to replace things. Things weren't important to me anymore. I had downsized, and it was okay. I felt a burden off of me, really. And got another dog, got another puppy, and I still have her today. She's just my life. And so through my travels, I decided I had to kind of find myself again and find my purpose. Because when you're married to someone for 33 years and you're an empty nester, your life plan is as one. So I never thought about what my future looked like or held when Troy was alive and we were together. We talked about it. I knew. I felt comfortable. When he died, all of that went away. Myself was not myself anymore. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know where I belonged in this world. I would try to go to our friends if they had get-togethers or parties, and I couldn't stay because everyone who were our friends were there with couples, and I was alone. Troy wasn't there. It didn't seem right. And so I really struggled with that a lot. And I probably should have communicated better, because I'm sure I have a lot of friends, and I think family too, that probably wondered what was wrong with me, why I don't come around. But I just couldn't. Had a hard time going to my mother-in-law's house because we were teenagers hanging out there all the way to having our babies and grandbabies there. And it was just hard. So through those travels and through that time, I decided that I liked public speaking, had done a little bit of it for work, never got to talk about what I wanted to talk about. So I started a small business, a speaking business, and it's expanded now into coaching. I used to be a business consultant, so it kind of fit right in. And I was fortunate enough to get to speak to some groups, women's motorcycle groups. I had an offer to speak to driver's ed, but that was when COVID was going on, and they went all virtual. So I didn't get to do that and talk about motorcycle safety, which really I was disappointed, but there'll be other opportunities. So by this time, almost all the justice things are done when I'm living in Pella. And I get a phone call, and he's got his final appearance, and it's that same day. The interesting thing about the court system is they'll set court dates and then they change them and move them at a whim.
I know that.
You know that, Brian, from your past, right? And you can hardly keep up with it. You don't know, And so the court victim advocate went for me because now I lived in Pella. I had a doctor's appointment that day I could not miss. And so I didn't go, and it didn't end up the way I wanted. My family and I were able to meet with the county attorney before this, and they basically told us it's COVID. A lot of people aren't going to jail right now, and we don't feel like the way the Iowa Code is written that we can win this case. And it was hard for all of my kids and I to understand, because we felt like driving without a license was reckless, and they were trying to say we have no way to prove that he was driving recklessly, and that's how the law is interpreted.
Right.
And my son had a really good comment. He asked the county attorney, he said, well, how is getting in a 2,500-pound weapon and driving it when you're not licensed not dangerous, not reckless? And, it was interesting. No one could answer that question. And I thought, you know what? That is so true. And so anyway, like I said earlier, he ended up with 2 tickets and what I would consider a small fine, $1,000.
Wow.
His license was barred. He'd never get one, which didn't matter because he kept driving. People would see him driving all the time. And so I learned not to just trust the system, but you have to be your own advocate. And I really didn't do that either. His family were immigrants, and so there was no money there to get any kind of, what do you call that?
Compensation?
Yeah, compensation for the actions. No accountability there.
Is there any crime victim assistance at all? But because the justice system failed, were you able to still get that or not?
So that's a great question, Bob. There is some, and it's very minimal. And, I think it was like $800. I didn't apply for it. I felt like at that time I was in a position that I was okay and I could support myself. And there's probably a lot of people out there that needed it way more than I did.
See, generally, when there is a crime, which I would say that's a crime.
Yeah.
There absolutely is crime victim, assistance that would at least pay for the funeral services.
Yeah.
And I just feel like with the justice system fail, that's why that failed also. So
Yeah.
that's just another thing on top of it that's very unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. And, a strong message that I always try to send is that your attitude means everything. So, it could have broken me. That fire could have been the final straw like I thought it was. And I could have been a bitter, angry person, but that would have not gotten me very far in life. And I didn't want to be bitter. I didn't want to be angry, because that's not who I am. And so I think it's important for people to understand that your attitude really dictates how you survive, how you get through things. It's what keeps you going. And don't get me wrong, we all have bad days. We all have bad attitudes at times. I do. I still do. I have in the past, and I will in the future, I'm sure. Not just around this, but just in general. But if I wouldn't have had a good attitude toward things and trusted in God and believed that I had a purpose and Troy's death had a purpose to help others, then I wouldn't be where I am today, and I wouldn't have inspired other people that I know I have, and I know that Troy has because they've told me. And going back to being helped and humbled, I have found that I'm probably more generous now than I was before. Again, things aren't important to me. It's more about the quality of life that I have and the joy that I have in that life. I do things now that I don't put off anymore because I know life is short. And I was one of those people that would buy dishes or buy an outfit but not wear it or not use the dishes only for special occasions, because I don't even know why. Because I don't know. Why did I do that? That was dumb. Now I use the antique dishes, right? If I wear the clothes I want to wear, I do what I want to do. I am okay with who I am and the authenticity that I have. And through the journey, I found myself. Sedona, Arizona is now one of my most favorite places on earth. It used to be Red Rocks in Colorado. My husband and I used to go to concerts at Red Rocks. I spread some of his ashes there.
Oh, nice.
Don't tell. Don't tell the Colorado environmental group. So I felt like I left a piece of him there, and that was one of his favorite places. Sedona, Arizona, I go now. I've been a couple times, and I really found myself there. It's the area in the desert is very healing, and when I'm there, I heal. I journal a lot. I listen to other people's stories and see if I can help them. The speaking business that I started a few years ago, I really dabbled in it and I didn't put any effort to it. And in the last year, I have put the effort to it and decided that that is something I can do even when I retire. And so I have a few clients that I coach. I'd like to start some grief groups so people can come together and talk about whatever they want to talk about and share with others who've been there and been through it before. I think it's really important for everyone to understand that they handle grief differently. There is no right or wrong way. I don't advise some ways that some of us go through it, but we all handle it our own way. And luckily, I didn't dwell in the self-destructive behaviors and do dumb things, and I moved out of that. But I just feel like his death has given me a different path in my life. And that path was probably always there. I just didn't know how to help others with it. And Troy's death gave me that opportunity to help.
And then, folks, we are going to take a time here. Every episode, we have a episode sponsor. And this was not planned at all, but I feel like it's so fitting that our episode sponsor is a life insurance company. So we'd like to take a moment and thank our paid sponsor of this episode, Wes Ashelman at State Farm. His support helps make this podcast possible, and we're proud to partner with someone who truly cares about the people in our community. Whether it's home, auto, or especially life insurance, Wes and his team are there to help you protect what matters most. Let's take a quick break and hear from them now.
Base hit right field. Rounding third. We are going out tonight.
But I just put my comfy pants on. What are we celebrating?
I just bundled our home and auto insurance with Albia State Farm and saved us money.
Oh, nice. Can we order in, though?
Are you serious? We just bundled, and our agent helped me personalize our coverage.
But what about my slipper and sweatpants bundle?
Contact State Farm agent Wes Ashelman and Albia to bundle and save today. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer. Availability, amount of discount, savings, and eligibility may vary.
Well, welcome back. During the commercial break, Jamie was telling us of a situation on the way here. Would you please share that with us?
Yeah. So I'm a firm believer in God leaves little messages for you if you see them and you're aware. And on my drive here today, thinking about what I was going to talk about and thinking about the story, on the radio on Apple Music, one of the songs that was played at my husband's funeral came on. Lay Me Down by Paul Cawthon. It was a song that my son chose. And it made me smile. I felt like that was a God thing. And Troy probably was saying, hey, you need to tell the story. Someone needs to hear it today. The Cardinals, I don't know where that started, but the meaning of the cardinal, I see cardinals often, and I talk to them. I feel like his presence is there with me. There's a lot of things that happen that I feel like his presence is there. There's times I think he's scolding me. He was never afraid to scold me.
This is one of my favorite parts of my job.
Yeah.
When people tell me these things that happen. I just think it's so special to hear those.
Yeah. It's real.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward to 2023, 2024, when some sort of justice or karma finally caught up.
Yeah. So, earlier I talked about how I just wasn't satisfied with what happened with the justice system. But I'm a true believer in karma. If you do good, good comes to you. And if you do bad or you are evil in any way, that comes back to you too. And I think it was 23. My mom called me at work and said, are you home? And I said, not yet. I will be in about 15 minutes. And she said, you need to watch the news because Majoke, that was the young man's name, who is now 18 in 2023. Majoke has been arrested and it's on the news. And I said, okay, I'll watch. So I went home and turned on the 5 o'clock news, and there was a federal gun and drug bust in Des Moines. They simultaneously took, I believe, 11 homes and raided them, arrested 11 members of the C Block, or they have another name, I can't remember, of that gang. And they found guns, they found attachments that make them machine guns. They arrested 2 women who had been doing straw purchasing guns and giving them to these young men. They ranged in age from 14 to 40-something. Wow. They had 32,000 fentanyl tablets. They had a bunch of cash. And it was the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, West Des Moines, I believe the Drug Task Force in the state of Iowa. But it was big. It was a big deal. It was big time. And of 100 shootings in the Des Moines area, they tied 96 of the guns
Wow.
to those shootings. And I believe they recovered 72 of the guns. The shooting starts right here, downtown Des Moines, which was gang related. The gun in that was related to this gang. And so they, I think it was Sergeant Paul Parizek spoke. He's a spokesperson for Des Moines Police, and said that this investigation had been going on for a year and a half. And when I sat there and watched that and thought about it, I thought that might be the reason that they didn't put him in jail.
Could be.
You know, you don't know. And so it could be I couldn't get information from the police because there was a bigger thing.
Right.
And he may not have had specific justice to Troy's death, but he has some justice, which gives me some justice. So I've been following this since 23 in federal court, and just recently he was found guilty of multiple counts, and he had faced 40 years to life, but the way the law works and the way the system works,
Yes.
it's rare that they get that full term. So he was sentenced to 16 years in federal prison. I don't know which federal prison he's going to. There is a service that I can sign up for that will notify me where he's held and when he is released. And I just don't know if I need to know that. I haven't decided yet. But I can explain the feeling I had the day that I got that news. I don't want to say it was joy, because it wasn't that I wanted him to pay for and be accountable for what he did, but I didn't want I want him to turn around his life. I don't know if he ever will. He's 18 now. When he was younger, that was my goal, is for him to turn around and have a better life. But now it's just a matter of I want him to pay for his crimes. And it's not only Troy that he's responsible for a death. There's many others that his hand has touched. So the justice system did prevail, and he will spend time away and be accountable. So I have that going, and I have carried on with my life. My kids, my family has. Everyone's doing really well and thriving. We have a few health situations with my kids in the family, but we're working through those with them. We don't dwell on the illness or the past. We live every day for the moment that it is. And we find the joy in every day. I have continued to work really hard on my business. And so it's called Inspire Empowerment. And I coach and speak. And my goal is to do some grief groups and just facilitate an area where people can get together, and they may not know each other, but they have similar situations that bind them. And I think it's important for people to have a safe place to be fully honest with themselves. I'm pretty much an open book. There's a few things that are secrets. My best friends know them, and they'll take them to their grave. That's what we joke about. I try to find humor in everything. So I dated. I was on dating sites. Let me tell you, there's a whole other podcast on that. My friends want me to start a podcast about what not to do on the dating sites. I met someone, and I moved to Albia, Iowa, and we both have been through some trauma, and he also has a really great outlook on life, and he has a really interesting story too.
Yes, he does. He would be great to have on to tell his story.
Yeah, I know that you know him, Bob. So, yeah, I moved in with him a year ago, and we're happy. Our families like each other, and we share grandkids, which I'm very grateful for. I share mine with him, and he shares his with me. So we really have a lot of fun. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at in life. Looking forward to retirement, still traveling as much as I can. That job is really holding me back from travel, though. But, you know, I work to support my lifestyle. So that's where I'm at right now, and I'll get plenty of traveling in.
Well, we're so glad that you came on today.
Well, thank you. I am so glad that you allowed me to share this.
Absolutely.
If one person can get a glimmer of hope or have something within their attitude change, then we've accomplished our purpose.
Sure have.
Yep.
Thank you. If there's anyone inspired to tell their story through Jamie's strength, please reach out. We want this to be an opportunity for people to get their story out there. We will see you next month for next episode. In the meantime, subscribe to the podcast on Spotify or YouTube at Life, Death, and everything in between. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or Facebook at Sinnott Funeral Home, and please share with all your friends. If you would like to be a guest or know someone that would like to be would be great, hit us up. We would be glad to get them on.
And remember, life's short, death's certain, and everything in between is worth talking about. See you next time.